Welcome back to number 3 on rejection and resubmission. I want to talk about waiting for the journal's decision. After you submit your paper to the journal, you're waiting every day. You're checking your email every day. Am I accepted? Am I rejected? What was the editor's decision? This is very painful. I know it feels stressful. You're wondering, what are they doing with my paper? The good news is that if you're waiting for more than 2 weeks, you have probably not been rejected with no review. You probably are getting a review. That's good news. Many times, journals will reject us with no review. Editors will reject us with no review. In fact, I've spoken with some journal editors who say they reject 60% of papers with no review. This means that if you are getting a peer review, you should feel lucky. Not everyone gets this. Editors do reject with no review. Now, why would an editor reject your paper with no review? Many times when I speak with my students, they feel depressed when they're rejected with no review, and they tell me, is my paper total garbage that the editor will reject me without even a chance to get a peer review? Well, maybe, maybe not. The reason an editor may reject you with no review may have nothing to do with the quality of your research. A common reason for rejection with no review is a problem called backlog. What is backlog? Backlog means that some editors have accepted too many papers. Maybe they have filled up their journal with articles for next issue, journal issue after that, and the journal issue after that. Sometimes backlog can be up to a year. I have seen 2 years in advance. And a new editor will come in and he will say, this is ridiculous. We have 2 years of backlog. Reject every paper until we publish our backlog. So the editor will just quietly send out this email saying thank you but no thank you, rejecting authors. So don't waste time feeling bad about this. This may not even be your fault. It could just be that the journal has accepted too many articles. And there's nothing to be gained by crying about this. Just send it out to a new journal as quickly as you can. A second reason that the journal may reject you is that the editor has already accepted a paper on your topic. It's in his backlog. He knows about it, but you don't know about it. He came first, so he's saying no to you. Again, it's not your fault, and it's not necessarily bad research. Just send it to a new journal as quickly as you can. Third reason why you could be rejected by the editor is that the editor doesn't like your topic or your style. Even though your research is good, doesn't suit the needs of his journal. How can you avoid this? Well, you could avoid this by reading the letter from the editor on the journal website. Often there will be a message from the editor or a letter from the editor, and in that letter he will tell you, the author, what he wants to see in his journal, the topics that are acceptable, the topics that are not acceptable. And you can save a lot of time by reading that letter from the editor. Now, this is different from the aims and scope of the journal. That's also helpful, but the letter from the editor is usually more specific and more updated as to what the editor wants. So take the time to read it, and you might also avoid getting rejected for this reason. After you submit your paper to the journal, how long before you should start contacting the editor about your paper? Sometimes we wait months and we hear nothing from the journal. What should we do in this type of situation? Well, I'll tell you what I do and what we do in my writing laboratory. And this may work for you, it may not. But after 3 months, if we hear nothing from the editor, we will send an email to the editor and ask him to please tell us what's going on with our paper. We will be very polite. We will say, dear editor, we are wondering about the status of our article titled, which we submitted to you on this date. When you send that letter to the editor, this is a good excuse now for the editor to contact the reviewers. And usually the editor is not upset if you try to contact him after 3 months. This is reasonable. If you still hear nothing, after 4 months, we will send 2 emails. And then after 5 months, we will start to contact everybody in the journal, the assistant editor, the senior editor, the production editor, the secretary, the dog, whoever we can find, if we have heard nothing from the journal. Now, if the editor contacts us and says everything is fine, it's under review, then we don't keep bothering the editor. But if we hear nothing from the editor after 6 months, we start to send an email every day because we are very afraid that maybe our paper is lost. This has happened to me twice, to students in my class. One student called the journal after 8 months and said, "Where's my paper?" And the editor said, "Paper? What paper? We don't have a paper." Oh. So after that little experience, we are concerned about our paper when we hear nothing from the editor, and we will start to bother everybody we can find. Now again, if we hear from the editor, we can wait after 6 months, but if we don't hear from the editor, in my lab, we will withdraw our paper, and we will send one more email to the editor saying, "We are withdrawing our paper titled which we submitted to you on this date." Always send the last email withdrawing your paper before you send it to a new journal. This is very important because double submission is a big problem that journal editors don't forgive. Basically, you can never send one paper to 2 journals at the same time. This is double submission, and editors will find out about it and warn each other about you, and you'll get a bad reputation in your field. So you must withdraw your paper from Journal A before you can submit to Journal B. I was at a conference a few years ago, and I met a lady, she's a biologist, who had this problem. She had submitted to a journal in her domain, and she waited for, I think it was 7 months, no response from the journal. So she tried to contact the journal. She emailed the editor, the assistant editor, the associate editor, the secretary, everybody she could find. Nobody replied to her. So she thought everybody died. I mean, it's a reasonable assumption. Nobody responds to her. So what did she do? She sent her paper to a different journal in her domain. Here's the problem. The reviewer from the second journal, the editor from the second journal, chose the same reviewer that the journal from the first, the editor from the first journal had chosen, the same reviewer. And this is common. Many times editors choose the same reviewer. So here's the reviewer. He has her paper from the first journal. Now he receives the same paper from a second journal. He's very angry. Double submission, he says. He emails both editors. Now these editors are also angry, and they send an email out to every other journal in her domain, warning them about her and telling them about her topic and about her as an author. She may never publish again. This is a terrible thing. Now, she could have avoided this problem if she had sent one more email saying, "I am withdrawing my paper from this journal," before she sent it to the other journal. Just remember that for your own, when you're withdrawing yourself. Here's a reminder email that you can send to the editor about your paper when it's been delayed and you want to know. "I'm just emailing to inquire about the status of my article titled," put your title, "which I submitted to your journal on," put the date here. Here's the key point. Don't get angrier over time. I know you feel angry in your heart, but be nice to the editor. Sometimes I read students' emails to the editor, and the students say, "Don't you understand? I'm a PhD student, and you are killing me." This will not help you. He may just reject you faster. Just continue to send this same polite, nice email over and over again until the editor rejects you or invites you to resubmit, or you withdraw your paper from that journal. Here are the emotions that you are likely to feel about your rejected paper. I want to go over these because when you're rejected, you're going to feel bad. This is normal and natural. And I don't want you to feel bad because you feel bad, if you understand what I'm saying. This is the natural cycle of emotions that we will all go through. I know these from my personal experience, and I have seen these emotions many times in PhD students who have their papers rejected. The first emotion you're going to have is depression. Oh, you are going to feel so blue, and it will rain every day for a week. You know, you're going to feel sad, and it's normal. Your paper is your baby, and no one loves your baby. Of course you're upset. In my class, when students disappear for 2 weeks, I know what happened. Their paper was rejected. And after 2 weeks, they return, and now they are angry. That's emotion number 2. They're angry at the editor. And they show me the letter from the editor, and they say, "Look, Steve, the stupid editor doesn't understand my genius idea." This is the second emotion. The third emotion, now they're angry at the system. They're not angry at the editor anymore. They say, "We speak Chinese. Why do we have to write in English? What is SCI, SSCI? I hate this whole system." The fourth emotion, when they return to class, they'll consider changing their job. They'll tell me, "Teacher, I don't even like research. I have a friend who works in the night market and sells cho tofu and janju naicha, and he's very happy. He's making a lot of money. I want to sell cho tofu too." And then the fifth week, they will say, they will review their manuscript one more time. They will read the editor and reviewer comments, and they will say, "Well, maybe the editor has a good point, and maybe the reviewers have some good revision. I think I am ready to revise my paper." My point is, don't expect to be at step 5 on the first day. This is a process. You will get there eventually, and it's totally normal that you feel unhappy at the decision that you receive from the journal. Remember, everybody gets rejected. Everybody, including you and me. When we're rejected, we have choices. Number 1, we can give up on our article. I don't think that's a good choice, honestly, but I'm sad to say that I was reading a study recently that showed that 30% of American graduate students, when their article is rejected, they give up on that article and that topic. Don't do that. Try again. Option 2, send the article with no changes to another journal. This is better, but I like option 3 even better. Revise the article and send it to another journal. Revise the easy English errors. Revise the mistakes that you know that the editors are right. You know you can improve, and they're easy to fix. And then also make the revisions to make it look like a fresh paper for this new journal by adding a new reference to the end of your article, so it looks like it was recently published, recently written. Finally, your last option, and this is a bad option, but you could argue with the journal editor that is rejecting you. This is an option, but it doesn't usually work. I mean, once the editor makes a decision, once the reviewers make a decision, he's very unlikely to change his mind, and I'm concerned that if you fight with the editor, he will have a bad impression of you, and it might be harder for you to submit to that same journal in the future. In fact, when you fight with the editor, he will send your argument letter to both of the reviewers to give their response. And at this point, the reviewers now can see your name. So they also know who you are, and they're very unlikely to change their mind. Now, there's one exception to this. One time I was working with a student, and he was rejected by one reviewer because of a mathematical error that the reviewer said he made in one of his calculations. Now, this student did not think he made a mistake. So in this case, we emailed the editor a very nice letter, and we said, "Dear editor, we were rejected because of this mathematical error that we don't think we made. Could we please have a third reviewer to look at only this error and see if we really made this mistake?" Now, in this case, the third reviewer said, "There was no mistake. I love this paper," and the editor actually published it. But that's unusual. And I think it's unusual because we were very specific about a very specific problem, and we were very nice, and we got a third reviewer. So if you have this kind of situation, you might also try to nicely protest to the journal editor about being rejected. Avoid the journals that always reject you. If a journal is always rejecting you, stop sending your papers there. They don't like you. They probably remember some negative comment about your previous paper. So if you keep sending paper and it's reject, 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 the editor might be thinking, oh no, not this guy, not again, I will reject. If you do think the editor doesn't like you for some reason, what you could do is just avoid sending your papers to that journal until a new editor takes over. Editors usually change every 3 years, okay? So just wait for 2 years and then new editor, aha, try again, fresh start. You should have other backup journals that you can submit to while you are waiting for the editor to change. Now, other authors have told me that they believe that the journals are biased against them because maybe they're female or maybe they're Chinese. They think that this hurts them. If you believe that the journal is biased against you because of being Chinese or because you are a woman, for example, you can use initials rather than your full name, like CW, for example. Now, naturally, they're going to see where the paper's coming from. They might see that it's coming from your part of the world, but you might minimize the bias, especially if you're a woman, using initials rather than the full name. And then, before you publish, after you're accepted, you could give the editor your full name to publish in your paper. Well, for more information, I want to direct you to my website, editing.tw. We revise research papers for Taiwanese scholars. We also have a blog, editing.tw/blog, where I have other videos and articles that will be very interesting for you to read if you're trying to publish your research. I've written several books that you can buy at my website, textbooks.tw. I've also republished books by great authors from North America, from England, who deal specifically with how we can better publish research papers. So to see more detail on those books that we have published and written, please visit our site, textbooks.tw. Thank you for joining us.